なるほど。私は夢を叶えたのだな。ならばなおさらこのようなところで散るわけにはいかない。
Zamasu is a character unlike any other in Dragon Ball. While the vast majority of the series' villains up until this point were introduced as pure evil, Zamasu is the first character in Dragon Ball history to actually develop into one, beginning his story as a Supreme Kai in training with understandable naive adolescent concerns. By the ending, we see him as a radicalized, megalomaniacal, genocidal psychopath. Characters like Cell and Frieza have fantastic utility within storytelling because of their pure evil nature, and I actually wrote a video on that too. However, because Zamasu didn't start as a villain and instead gradually developed into one, both he and Goku Black showed us something we never had seen before in Dragon Ball, and I'm going to show you how they did that. Today I'm going to dive in depth discussing the character of Zamasu, analyzing the dialogue and his unique character arc, all in an effort to figure out how and why writers turn their characters evil. This is Zamasu. Okay, so right off the bat I can already hear what some of you out there might be asking. So what if Zamasu started as someone with good motivations? He eventually became an evil character just like Frieza and Cell. Why does it matter if he started as good? Well, characters that undergo this negative change have something which characters like Frieza and Cell don't have: emotional resonance and believability. They are rooted more in reality, and so we can understand and empathize with their motivations much more easily because we see how they came to be that way. Now, that doesn't mean that we believe they're right or even have a point, but we can see more clearly how they came to be, which creates a more realistic connection to the viewer. A well-crafted negative change arc provides viewers with a character that reveals interesting truths both about the world and about the viewers themselves. When structured properly, a negative change arc can act as a cautionary tale that can inspire great change in all of us.
Oh. Peter, don't tell Harry.
But to fully understand the negative change arc and how to write one, it's important to first understand the most common arc found in fiction. You'll find this arc in Marvel, Into the Spider-Verse, Dragon Ball, Game of Thrones, and pretty much every other story told. And this arc is called the positive change arc. In K.M. Weiland's book called Creating Character Arcs, she describes the positive change arc. In it, she says, "The positive change arc is all about the lie the character believes. The character is harboring some deeply held misconception about either himself, the world, or both." In other words, the lie the character believes is sort of the character's flaw. Often the main protagonist will spend the majority of the story addressing and coming to grips with this lie before coming out on the other side a changed person for the better, having rejected their lie and adopting a new truth. For example, before the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, Piccolo Jr. is revealed as the spawn of the former King Piccolo as the villain and antagonistic character for Goku to overcome during the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. And man, is he a terrific character during this portion of the story. Unlike the conclusion to the prior saga, Goku elects to not show Piccolo the same fate his father met. As a result, Piccolo recovers and then retreats. What's interesting about this is that Piccolo Jr. is not who his father was, but because he's the son of King Piccolo, Piccolo believes that that's who he is. This is the lie that he believes. And it takes forces from another world and the son of his former nemesis to show him that he is his own person. He's kind, he's protective, he's selfless, resulting in one of the most emotionally resonant scenes in the entire series. And this brings us to the negative change arc. The negative change arc is essentially the positive change arc, but flipped on its head. Instead of a character that grows out of his faults and into a better person, the negative change arc presents a character who ends in a worse state than that in which he began the story. If we look at Zamasu alongside someone like Frieza, clear differences are observed. When we first meet Frieza, it's made abundantly clear that this guy is insane in the most dangerous of ways, with goals that are clearly insidious. Similar conclusions could have been drawn about King Piccolo, Vegeta, and Cell, but this is clearly not what our first impression of Zamasu is. He's subservient, patient, motivated, and somewhat anxious, with his pure heart and good sensibilities reflected in the quality of the tea he prepares for his master, the Supreme Kai of Universe 10, Gowasu. However, this anxiety he feels leads him to say this.
人間とは本当に守るべき存在なのかと。
This is one of the many pivotal turning points for Zamasu's character, which perfectly highlights the lie that he has been developing, the belief that he is better than mortals by virtue of the fact that he holds a higher rank in the cosmos. This conflict of emotions, morals, and duty is very interesting. As author George R.R. Martin has said, the internal struggle within a character's mind and morals are where the true wonder of complex character writing is found.
You have to take your characters and you have to put them through crises. That's what fiction and drama is all about. It's not your hero has a really good time. Things have to happen that cause the characters to question who they are and what their place in the world is and what the meaning of it all is. To go through the dark nights of the soul and times of fear and terror. And, I've always taken as my mantra William Faulkner's words in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, where he said, the human heart in conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing about.
In reality, people are complicated. They don't fit into perfect archetypes very easily, and it's this very same emotional conflict that's observed in Zamasu during episode 53. He goes on to explain that he is concerned with mortals' never-ending cycle of self-destruction, thinking that their continued efforts, as history has shown, are futile. What makes this more tragic is that he's saying this from a place of compassion, wishing to spare mortals any further suffering at their own hands. It's clear that he is deeply in need of guidance to correct this naive viewpoint. However, Gowasu gives him possibly the worst piece of advice someone like him needed at this time. He says, "The duty of the Kais and the Supreme Kais is to create, not to execute punishment. We only watch over and nurture." This does not address Zamasu's concerns and only reinforces his growing resentment for the Kai's way of life. After expressing what he considers genuine concerns to his master, Gowasu responds by saying it's not our pay grade. It's in receiving this response that the lie Zamasu had been curious about has now become stronger. What's more is that it is immediately reinforced seconds later by this. Despite learning his name and consistently being engaged by Goku, Zamasu refuses to address him in any other way than mortal. Check it out, watch the scene, he never once calls him Goku. Again, emphasizing quite well through dialogue how Zamasu views himself above all mortals. With that said, however, it's Goku's first fight with him that tells us everything we need to know about his character. Having been instructed by Gowasu against his wishes to fight Goku, Zamasu still considers himself far above any mortal, demonstrated visually in his calm counter of Goku's very first strike. Notice his facial expression, closing his eyes dismissively as he pushes Goku's fist to the side, followed swiftly after by him arrogantly announcing, "It ends here," claiming that the fight is already over. Zamasu moving then to deliver the final blow. However, something happens. This lie he believes has led him down a path that caused him to make a fatal mistake. He underestimated Goku. Goku blocks the attack. The second Goku's hand meets Zamasu's is the moment Zamasu's lie is challenged. His world, his reality is challenged. This is also reinforced by the musical score. The second Goku's counter meets Zamasu's attack, Goku Black's theme begins to play, signifying in that moment, Zamasu became the villain of the arc. Instead of seeing Goku's remarkable ability as an indication that he might not fully understand mortals, he instead clings to his lie and rejects the truth, viewing Goku and others like him as threats to the god's divine nature and wisdom, inevitably spiraling towards their own destruction. Zamasu now believes a worse lie as a result, that not only is he above the comprehension of mortals, but he views himself now as more enlightened than the gods. The concept and initial execution of Zamasu is fantastic, and as the villain of this arc, I thought he was perfectly packaged alongside Goku Black. As the arc progressed and in some cases stumbled towards its conclusion, Zamasu's actions became increasingly more severe and extreme to a point where he became unrecognizable. However, this arc, as many of you know, left a lot to be desired in its third act. I don't think this is necessarily a result of Zamasu's character, but more so to do with him lacking similarities to the main protagonist of this arc, Trunks. At the end, Trunks confronts Fuse Zamasu, who has become mutilated and contorted to a gruesome extent because of this lie he refuses to let go of, which is a fantastic visual representation. But I think this altercation between these two characters could have benefited greatly by a popular concept found in films like this. In Sony's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the main character Miles Morales needs to start being who he really is, instead of who he thinks people want him to be. But like many teenagers, he doesn't know who he is yet and can't trust himself. He's unable to take a leap of faith, because it's scary. Taking leaps of faith is terrifying both metaphorically and literally. And this is demonstrated brilliantly through Peter B. Parker's character, acting as the film's example of what happens and what might happen to Miles if and when you don't address the lie or fear that you have. Peter B. Parker is a point of contrast from Miles Morales, showing what happens when you let the lie itself take over. But thankfully, over the course of the film, both Miles and eventually Peter overcome their lies they believe and come out on the other side more complete people. Now I know what you're saying, those are two protagonists. How could it work with a villain and a hero? Well, very easily. But first I want to point out that there are a lot of things that work about Zamasu and Trunks' dynamic. They both care for the development and prosperity of their respective spheres of influence. However, Zamasu does not trust in mortal ability to handle conflict. Trunks, at the same time, doesn't believe in his own abilities to achieve what he knows is good. But what this dynamic lacked was that Trunks can't fall down the same path Zamasu did. So what's the lesson? Don't be crazy like Zamasu? I understand that Trunks coming to believe in himself and humanity is the conclusion of his arc, but it's in no way linked to Zamasu's experience, and I can't help but feel that that was a missed opportunity. A great example of this can be seen in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man series, with the character of Harry Osborn turning to the dark side, turning bad as he is consumed by his desire to avenge his father's death. A wonderful example of a negative character arc, but also a wonderful comparison to our Peter Parker, who suffered a similar loss and became overcome by vengeance. And this exemplifies why negative character arcs work well in showing us how easily a character or hero could have gone down the wrong path more easily than we might have recognized. Imagine if Zamasu was a powerful mortal character like Trunks, who like him didn't believe in his or other mortals' abilities to prosper, leading him down a path of terror and arrogance just like we saw with Zamasu in the series. With this, the arc could have been so much more impactful at its conclusion, and could have actually had a satisfying ending. However, with that said, the future Trunks arc Zamasu demonstrated a wonderful design, fantastic early characterization, and a compelling motivation, making him the first sympathetic villain Dragon Ball has ever had, and hopefully, it won't be the last. Thanks for watching.